So there's a lot going on this week. This has been an interesting one. We're barely starting out 2026 here, only a little over a full week into January of this year. And already you have the United States launching attacks into Caracas to abduct slash arrest Nicolas Maduro. And you had the shooting slash killing of Renee Good in Minnesota by ICE agents. That, by all accounts, after watching multiple videos from multiple angles, I myself see no legitimate reason why she was shot and killed in the first place. I'm all for protecting the border. I'm all for enforcing laws that we have on the books. I'm all for being fair and humane and reasonable about this and protecting ourselves, but that's not what this was. It's not what this was at all. I consider myself very disappointed in an administration that I already didn't have very high hopes in, but this is really setting a dangerous precedent. Apparently over 200 or roughly 200 American citizens have been arrested and placed into detention centers. Pregnant women have been dragged to the point of miscarrying. Kids have been pulled out of schools. Parents have been pulled out of work, etc. And at a certain point, it really needs to just be acknowledged that this is not humane. This is not what the United States should stand for, frankly. This isn't protecting ourselves. This is being a bully, which is something the United States is unfortunately fairly good at. There is no precedent. There is no legal justification for comply or die when it comes to ICE or any other law enforcement agency. The only time any law enforcement agency is legally allowed to use deadly force is when there is the imminent threat that a reasonable person would interpret as a actual threat to their person, causing great bodily injury or death. And what you got was a woman that was in a car that an ICE agent voluntarily circled multiple times and then stood in front of and maybe got bumped hard enough that he needed to go to a chiropractor. Is it unfortunate that he got hit by a car for a woman that was trying to quickly get away from another ICE agent that was aggressively pulling on her driver's side handle to try to get into her vehicle and likely pull her out and quite likely arrest her? It's unfortunate that that happened. It's also not good enough justification to shoot the lady. It just isn't. Never has been and never will be. There is no ands, ifs, or buts about it. ICE overstepped. That's not them performing their duties. It had nothing to even do with an immigrant. It wasn't an official stop. They weren't stuck in the snow. They didn't need to confront her that way. They didn't need to get out of their cars at all. They were frustrated that she was impeding them. She even waved them on and told them, hey, I'm not upset with you guys. Just go. And yet she still gets shot. And that's ridiculous. There is nothing okay about how that went down. Not a single damn thing. And yet I doubt we're going to see justice, at least on the federal side. So if any meaningful kind of police action or criminal action is taken against any of these agents, it's going to have to be at a state level, because the federal government is already trying to ice out local and state officials and sweep it under the rug and act like it wasn't any kind of notable thing. That's not how it should go. And only the state government and local governments at this point can push and host their own investigations and potentially reach a different verdict than the federal government almost certainly will. In regards to the attack on Venezuela and the abduction slash arrest of Nicolas Maduro, I don't think anybody here in the United States is mourning for Maduro. None of us think he's some kind of stand-up guy that was truly democratically elected and deserved to stay in power. None of us are a fan of him, but the precedent that this is setting and rebranding the Monroe Doctrine, which gives the United States or claims for the United States the entire Western Hemisphere as its sphere of influence, is frankly kind of regressive, and it's dangerous. And it really seems to play more to the ego of President Trump than anything else. And do we actually need Greenland? No. And more than likely, my suspicion is if we're going to be smart about this, we won't use military force against Greenland. We'll use economic pressure. We'll offer more in investment. We'll pressure local politicians to vote on a referendum to leave and declare independence from Denmark, right, etc. We'll do things like that and bring Greenland under our sphere of influence in a more peaceful way. But who knows if we're actually going to do it the smart way. Maybe we just quote unquote need it now and we may actually just push it. I don't know. We'll have to see how this administration handles it. But I wouldn't be surprised if Venezuela is just the start of this Trump 2.0 era adventurism. And not that there aren't wrongs that should be righted in the world, but I think we're choosing some really dumb ones to go after. Ones that we either can't fix or that are definitely should be lower on the priority list, because it's not about righting wrongs. It really does seem to be, it's a series of power plays. It's a series of the United States, and specifically from a Donald Trump perspective, pursuing a series of goals and aims that strengthen our near to long term power, and then Donald Trump's own ego and ability to negotiate in increasingly aggressive ways, like using Venezuelan oil to choke out the regime in Cuba. At least that's what they seem to be wanting to do. They're putting Colombia on notice, and their leftist president apparently on notice that if he continues to effectively thumb his nose at the Trump administration, that there will be consequences, etc. Whether or not these are in any way, shape, or form justified. And we would never support even allied nations engaging in such reckless adventurism. It sounds like we're quite possibly going to be doing it ourselves because we're America and we can. I don't think that's wise or a good long-term strategy, but that does not seem to be the primary concern of this current administration. And there's not a whole lot most of us can do about it in the short term, aside from protest and maybe consider a general strike and kind of try to speak with our wallets and definitely with our votes in November of this year and moving forward as we have additional elections. Unless we want a violent overthrow of our government, which I don't think most of us want. We kind of have to let this one ride out because this is what the American people chose. This is what we all collectively chose together, which is disappointing. I think these two events within the last week or so, both the abduction slash arrest of Maduro and the shooting slash killing of Renee Good, really speaks to where the optics are going for this administration. I think it really shows that two of the biggest pushes from Trump 2.0 is going to be big on supposedly immigration enforcement that I think is going to increasingly have little to do with actual immigration enforcement. And two, adventurism, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, and solidifying our power that we really mostly already had and could have achieved through more peaceful means if we'd really wanted to. Now, maybe the quote unquote conquest of Venezuela was at least in part to help prop up the petrodollar, since you have BRICS nations of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and others that have joined that BRICS alliance are talking about replacing using the US dollar in trading of oil for what they're calling the unit that has been proposed recently. But I mean, you're still talking that's years off more than likely from being implemented. So did Donald Trump need to do that now? No. And I doubt there's any one singular thing that led to the Trump administration really wanting to attack Venezuela slash abduct and arrest Maduro. I suspect it has to do with choking out the communist regime in Cuba. Probably has to do with reasserting ourselves on the, at least optically, on the world stage in the Western Hemisphere, putting other even allies on notice that when we say we want Greenland or we want Canada or we want Colombia or whatever the case may be, or Panama, that we mean it. And I suspect all of that plays into this. I suspect oil is a component, but likely more of a plus than a necessity. I think supporting and keeping upright the petrodollar and the use of the American dollar in trade of oil globally is likely an important factor, especially as BRICS nations attempt to, or seemingly attempt to, replace it with what they're calling the unit that is internationally used, that the United States is definitely not going to benefit from. Probably multifaceted here, but these two events, the killing of American citizens that were not actually attacking ICE agents, and American adventurism that is not truly necessary or even brought on by something like a terrorist attack, I think is what we're going to see a lot more of in this Trump 2.0 administration. I think this is just the start. And I think a lot of this probably gets worse before it gets better, for better or worse. I don't think Trump really cares if there are protests and if even violent. In fact, he may even prefer that because it justifies him using more force against the American people. I don't think this is going to get better before it gets notably more intense. And unfortunately, Trump is not the answer to the middle class and working classes' economic issues. He, I believe, has already made pretty clear that he has his sights set on quote unquote bigger issues. Flight of the middle class is something that he's increasingly abandoning. And I think we'll continue to see that as time goes on during this administration. So if you want to stay up on current events and hear more analysis about where we're likely going in the future, stick around. We'll definitely be talking about it.